There was nothing else at all in the whole world but football.
Hello and welcome to the Triple F for an episode of Under the Floodlights, where guests come on to discuss their favourite players, managers or even referees to find out why they think so much of them. This episode will be joined by a good and long-time friend of mine, Stuart. Stuart is a performance coach who works on both the mental and physical aspects of an athlete's performance. He has worked with the Northampton Saints rugby team, was part of the coaching staff for the under-20s Great Britain ice hockey team that won 2 bronze medals at 2 World Championships, a part of the English Ice Hockey Association's strength and conditioning team, performance coach for Peterborough Phantoms, strength and conditioning coach for King's Elite Goaltending, and has his own performance coaching company, Edwards Elite Performance. Having known Stuart since the age of 5, it was great to relive a little bit of our youth and to find out why Zinedine Zidane is his favourite player of all time. A footballer who really doesn't need much of an introduction. The word legend or superstar very often gets bandied around far too easily when it's not necessarily warranted. However, there are absolutely no doubts at all that Zinedine Zidane is an absolute legend of the game. A powerfully elegant and masterful technician of a football who has won 2 Serie A titles, a La Liga title, a Champions League and a World Cup, just to name a few. He's also won the Ballon d'Or and been voted FIFA World Player of the Year on 3 occasions. Join us now to find out why Stuart regards Zizou as his favourite player of all time, as Zinedine Zidane goes under the floodlights.
Thinking about this the other day, and I remember getting like Panini sticker books. I swear I just saw this like monk-looking guy. I thought he can't be very good at football. But then I saw again in Goal and then Shoot magazine, all these different magazines, and they were like big sort of centerpiece features of Zidane. I was just thinking, there's obviously this guy's pretty good. And then I think I saw him playing for Juventus on a what was that show called that we had on Channel 4? Was it Football Italia? Yeah. And then just seeing him playing there, just thinking, oh my God. I just like seeing the sort of build that he was, because he's a big guy, isn't he? He's not a...
Yeah, I think it was like 6'2", wasn't he? 6'2".
Yeah. So he's not like your Maradona or Messi or anything like that. And then just seeing this guy play like a Maradona or a Messi, it's just an incredible sight. What's your sort of first memory?
Mine was Champions League, like on ITV, and the music started, you know what I mean? And I just thought, this is immense, you know what I mean? Like, because at that time, there wasn't much Premier League on the TV or anything. It was match of the day, you know? But then those Champions League nights, and if you look at the Juve team that he was in, you had like Didier Deschamps and Edgar Davids as well in midfield. And I just thought, like, this is unbelievable, you know, like it's just a different level. And it was kind of like you were watching something special every time the Champions League came on. And I think that was it. And I think the first real kind of knowledge of Zidane was like probably in like 97, maybe, you know, because he went to the Euro 96, you know, like he played for France in Euro 96. He didn't play much, and I think he was used a bit of a scapegoat, you know, people thought he wasn't going to do anything. And he was 22, you know, at Euro 96, and he made his debut. But then it's like, in that time, you discovered who, you know, what kind of player he was. And then that was it, Champions League, you know, ITV, Star Champions. And that was it, Zidane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Zidane.
Maybe it was like characters like Zidane, like Edgar Davids, like these sort of, especially in Serie A, I think that a lot of them, kind of helped to really elevate the Champions League, like these star players. I think Ronaldo, obviously, being one as well, the original Ronaldo. Really, because obviously Champions League is the highest sort of level of football. But back in those days, I think Champions League had just sort of entered into everybody's sort of consciousness, and that's where it was like the grandest stage. I think, like you say,
also because you didn't get to see these players every week, and some of the players you wouldn't see until major international tournaments, the Euros, World Cups. And then all of a sudden you could watch them every week. And it was just like, this is immense.
Yeah.
And Zidane was that kind of star quality that everyone was just wanting to watch. It didn't, you had your options. And like, to be honest, if it wasn't a Man United game, I'd be watching Juve.
Yeah.
And just for Zidane. That was kind of my first thing of it.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned about him in Euro 96 as well, because I think if you think about it, like, he had a pretty good career at Bordeaux, but was still relatively kind of unknown. And then it was really at Juventus. So it almost like he went from sort of 0 to 100. Sort of elevation to really what kind of player he was. And I think maybe just being the main guy in a big team really helped him just absolutely tear the world apart.
I mean, it helps when you're playing next to Didier Deschamps and Edgar Davids there, doesn't it? You know what I mean? Like, I think also, like, people like Edgar Davids come into the fore with like the Nike adverts and all that kind of publicity through there, and it wasn't that Zidane took part in that, because it didn't really do much in that sense. You know what I mean? Like the sponsorship and that kind of thing, but I think it just raised the profile of everyone. You know what I mean? And then obviously you start appreciating who the top players are, especially, like I said, the Champions League. And it's just that moment when the hairs go up at the back of your neck, and when you're watching, you're watching something special.
If you had to describe Zidane in terms of his sort of playing style in any way, what's the best way that you could sort of muster a description?
Probably just the ultimate number 10. Like that, the guy he's not in normal midfield. He's not sitting in midfield. You know what I mean? He's floating around in between the strikers and the centre midfielders. And I think that's why that Juve team was so good, because they had, again, Didier Deschamps, Edgar Davids sitting there, and he could do what he wanted, and he did. And I think, that's kind of where I'd put him, is that number 10, like the ultimate number 10, because it was big, as you said, it was big. It wasn't like a small player that would just, weave in and weave out. He was just like, as soon as he started moving his feet, you couldn't get near him. But that's what I'd say.
I think, like, if you were the opposition and you saw Zidane for the first time, you would just think, centre back or defensive midfielder. But then he gets on the ball and he's possibly one of the most elegant midfielders of all time, and just the touch. Because I think Bergkamp had an amazing touch, but Zidane's touch was just another level. It was just insane how that man could have such incredible control of the ball.
Yeah, like Bergkamp was totally different, I think, where it was the ball into him and he'd control it and then go. I think with Zidane, it was like he was pulling the strings, rather than someone that was just up top. his touch was amazing. Like, have you watched the Zidane film where they just followed him for a whole game?
It's mesmerising, isn't it?
Yeah, he didn't even have a good game. You know what I mean? And he was just, it was a different level. You know, you just watch. You knew you were watching something special. And I think when he agreed to do that documentary, he said, "Look, you record in one game. He said, it doesn't matter whether I have a good or a bad game. I'm not doing it again. Like, it is literally one game, and that was it." I think apart from like having a bit of a chat with Roberto Carlos and stuff like that, I think there wasn't much going on in that game. But it was still, that was the way he played as well. Sometimes he'd disappear and then all of a sudden that was it, bang, done.
I think like pulling the strings is definitely the best way to sum it up, because I think with, like you say, with Bergkamp, a lot of his sort of control was if it was like a long ball or a high ball, he would sort of pluck it out of the air, which Zidane could do with a hell of a lot of ease as well. The difference with Zidane is, I was watching these videos of him not that long ago, Zidane, where he was sort of playing in sports halls with kids and grown men, and he would with ease just put them on their asses, like time after time after time. He could just do it, and it was just, but he could do that on sort of five-a-side level, but he could also do it on the Champions League level as well. It's just,
mate, it was insane sometimes. I went to watch him in a charity game in 2013. So he'd been retired for, it was like 7 years. And he played for the Real Madrid legends against Man United legends. And it's just unbelievable. Still, at that point, it was mad, mate. Yeah, like everyone, you could feel like everyone just know that something's going to happen when he gets the ball. Still at that point, like I said, he'd been retired 7 years, and people were still like, you're still watching something special. But yeah, I think Yapstam played in that game, and that was kind of the same thing. You know what I mean? As soon as Yapstam got close, you knew that he would run over his grandmother to get that ball. Not as awful, mind you, Yapstam, but still effective.
Yes, wow, he was a hell of a centre back, and you don't be a great centre back, especially when Alex Ferguson says that it was one of the biggest mistakes letting him go.
Yeah.
Did you know about Zidane almost joining the Premier League?
No, I didn't actually. No.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly which year it was, but apparently Kenny Dalglish actually wanted him at Blackburn, and their owner, Jack Walker at the time, said, "Why do you want Zidane when we've got Tim Sherwood?" Exactly.
I mean, Tim Sherwood must have, now thinking about it, must be absolutely on cloud nine. I mean, imagine that. Didn't want Zidane, they had me. You're like, oh my goodness.
I wonder if that Jack Walker guy's still like, Tim Sherwood's way better than Zidane. Well, I think if there was ever perhaps the worst decision in football, that's got to be right up there.
It's got to be up that and sign in George Weah's cousin. You remember at Southampton? Oh mate, it's one of the funniest things ever. I think I can't remember who was the manager at the time, and they were like, "Oh yeah, God, like George Weah's, cousin is supposed to be unbelievable." Didn't see him play, didn't do anything, and he came on and he was horrendous. I mean, like pub league horrendous in a Premier League game, and you just think, how does it happen? How does it happen? But yeah, that's got to be up there as well.
But, yeah, I think, you know, if you are Kenny Dalglish or anybody involved with Blackburn, you just think, why on earth didn't you just go out of your way to sign Zidane? But then again, it probably goes back to what you mentioned earlier, and you know, where what we were talking about earlier, where at Juventus, that's where he really just sort of elevated his career, and that's where it all took off. Whereas at Bordeaux, obviously there were signs of excellence there. There were signs of how good this guy was, but it really wasn't until he sort of went to Juventus where it all just took off. Because it kind of reminds me a little bit of Lewandowski, because I think Lewandowski was actually at one point, I think Sam Allardyce wanted to sign him for Bolton. And I think as a youngster, I don't think Lewandowski was half the player that he is now. It's weird, like some players. Jamie Vardy's a perfect example as well, where these players they're just not quite, or they're only sort of there and thereabouts in terms of their sort of playing ability. But then they get into their sort of latter years, and that's where they just shoot off. I think Zidane's a kind of prime example of that as well.
Yeah, I think I've got it here. He went to Juve for 3.15 million. But mind you, that is in like 96, 97.
Yeah, so
but if you think that Alan Shearer went to Newcastle for, what was it, 15 million?
Yeah, 15 mil was the record, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you just think, if you compare those two, like, don't get me wrong, Alan Shearer, great striker over in the Premier League. However, not Zidane.
No. How if you had to put a price tag on Zidane nowadays, what would you say?
You couldn't.
Prices.
It would be,
I'd say double what Neymar's.
300 million.
Yeah,
300 million maybe.
Yeah.
You just, it'd be absolutely ridiculous. You wouldn't even bother. Like, it's a bit of a messy at Barcelona situation.
Yeah,
there's just no point talking about numbers.
Mind you, if I was like a director at Man City, it's like, just have a word with the bank, see what we can do. It's gonna be worth it.
No, but if only.
Were you sort of first drawn to Zidane as a player for his time at Juventus, or was it more when he was at Real Madrid?
Juve was the, like I said, it was those Champions League nights on the Tuesday or a Wednesday, and he just, it was I think Juve at the time were the Champions League to me. You know what I mean? It was. I think it was. They were like, they had everything, and I think that's. Yeah, and then obviously when he went to Real Madrid, it was, then they started the Galacticos and all that stuff. But yeah, it was definitely Juve, and then obviously, then it was the '98 World Cup, and then he played in the Champions League final. Obviously, Man United treble season, but yeah, he played in that game as well, and I can't remember him playing. I think I was just so busy worrying about Jesper Blomqvist playing, and David May, Phil Neville. But yeah.
How are the sort of three main clubs for Zidane? You have to say are obviously Juventus, Real Madrid, and then France. Out of those three, would you say he made the sort of most impact?
I think France, and I think because Juve were a great team anyway.
Yeah.
And I think at the time. And then when he went to Real Madrid, I mean, he didn't actually win that much at Real Madrid. You know, Barcelona were huge at that point. And I think, again, with Real Madrid, they still had a ridiculous wealth of talent. And yes, he was the best of it, but he wasn't everything. And I think in France, in 98, I think he was, he just pulled everything together, you know. And yes, they had Deschamps, Thuram, Desailly, you know, and then obviously, I think Henry around coming in.
Henry sort of introduced at that time.
Yeah. And then obviously what he did in the final and that kind of thing, it's just, you know, I think he had a bigger impact. And that, I think if you look at later on in his career, I'd say that at times he dragged that French team around, you know, and some unbelievable performances, which we'll probably get onto later on. But yeah, I'd say France. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was obviously a massive part of them winning the World Cup in '98. But I think in 2000, you're absolutely right when you said that he dragged the team. He definitely dragged it.
Was it 2000? No, it wasn't 2000. I was thinking one of them he missed it because
I think it was a head.
2002, I think maybe. I think he missed. But 2000 again. Yeah.
Was it a game? Because obviously we'll get onto this later. Actually, we can talk about it now, I suppose. With Zidane, obviously, we don't need to talk that much about his playing ability. I mean, for the world to see how incredible the guy was. If you kind of had to pull out a weakness, I think his temperament is definitely a weakness, and I think it was something especially Materazzi knew about. I think it was Materazzi's game plan to get under his skin in that final. But with that, because I think in 2000 he headbutted. Was it against Saudi Arabia or one of the teams? Yeah, and he likes a headbutt, doesn't he? That's
yeah.
I think that's what's endearing about Zidane. It's like, okay, he's crossing the line and he's making fouls and he's doing things he shouldn't do. But at the same time, he's kind of standing up for what he believes in. He's, you know, a lot of the time, and he said this in an interview as well, 12 out of the 14 red cards he's received are all from provocation. So
I've got it here, yeah. Yeah, I've got it here.
So it's clear you don't fuck with Zidane because, you know, you get headbutt.
Yeah, he said this isn't as an excuse, but my passion, temper, and blood made me react. Like, and that's what made me love him even more. Like, I love that side of players. You don't get it really anymore. Like Stuart Pearce, or, you know, someone that you knew if you upset, you were going to be in trouble. You know what I mean? And obviously Roy Keane, Patrick Vieira, and people like that. And I just think he was a genius. And I think there's nothing more likable than a genius with a little bit of a weakness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think it's endearing.
Yeah. Flawed genius.
And and I think it's mad because I think obviously like after that, I mean, let's face it, he came out of retirement in 2006, you know, and it was his last ever game that happened. People forget that, but also that he was the player of the tournament. He was rated player of the tournament. And not only that, when he played against Brazil, I don't know if you remember the game, but I just thought, you cannot get better. It was his game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Bear in mind, this is a player that's one game away from retirement.
Yeah.
And he made Brazil look average. Like, it was a totally different game. And I just remember watching it going like, he's on a different level. Like, he's not even playing the same sport, you know. It was too easy for him, you know. And yeah, and then obviously to the final came, and that happened. But it kind of made me love him even more, you know.
Yeah.
It was that. Okay, I don't actually care that it's a World Cup final.
Yeah,
like that was it. And like, obviously that vision of him walking past the World Cup down the tunnel. It's like he didn't have to say anything or do anything. And I think, like, here it says that the Poles' immediate wake of the incident said that 61% of French people said they had already forgiven him. That was it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I think maybe it's because of what was said by Materazzi, and I think, you know, if anybody, it's almost like, say, like a school incident. If somebody gets into a fight, and then your initial thought is like, you shouldn't punch that child, and then the child says, yeah, but he said this about my sister. Like, yeah, it's still wrong, but okay, come on. I think that's why it's kind of so endearing. I think, like he sort of said before in those interviews, that, you know, a lot of his red cards are because people just tried to provoke it. And I think a lot of the time they used his heritage, they used his background, they used his family as sort of fuel for the fire. And Zidane just didn't stand for that. And I think people kind of like that. Okay, you're kind of crossing the line, you're not doing it in the right way, so to speak. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, don't say those things. But and as well, and I think, you know, maybe that's kind of helped spark a bit of a movement towards, you know, the investigations of these incidents, because, you know, these things are now looked into further now. But if somebody says anything like that, you won't get away with these days. And, you know, that maybe it's like there's a slight correlation to the incident with Zidane.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, as you know, in Geneva they've got the statue, and it is literally the moment he headbutts him.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And it's beautiful.
It is
like,
a thing of beauty.
It's so funny because it was made in Qatar, and they had it in Qatar, but they had complaints because they said advertised poor discipline and you know, that kind of thing. And then obviously the Swiss were like, well, we'll have it. And it's literally, mate, I remember we spent the whole day going through like Old Town Geneva. It's beautiful, you know, lovely statues and so much history. And then you come out to Lake Geneva, which is stunning. There's mountains and, you know, forestry, and, you know, just a real beautiful city. And then you've got Zidane's statue right on the front next to Lake Geneva. And you're like, you don't really need to say anything else. And I couldn't remember, because obviously I was trying to think. I think on the plaque, on the information bit, it says something like, one player loses their temper, another player loses his balance. And it was it was amazing. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, but it's so funny, and it just goes to show that, I mean, that's in Switzerland, you know, in Geneva, and that statue's there, you know, and it was just like, well, you know, what more can you say about his appeal than that, I suppose.
I think like what that incident really sort of typifies is a sort of non-conformism, just in a way. It's almost like punk rock principles, just like, you know, the underdog against the suits. It's like doing the wrong thing.
He was always like that. Yeah, he was always like that, because there's those pictures of him when they won the World Cup, and they went to see the French president, and he's on the balcony having a fag out the back. You're like, it's crazy. It's kind of a throwback because football had already turned into the kind of, it was under the process where I think a lot of the characters were being lost. There was still quite a few around, but it was just that, like you said, the two fingers up kind of.
Yeah,
I am what I am. You know what I mean? Like, just that kind of. Yeah, and I think that's the big appeal. That was the big appeal about him.
Yeah, it is. It is hilarious, and like you say, like grandest stage of them all to do something like that. It's I think at the time, like you say, most French people I think at the time they would have been just gutted to have seen that, because he was obviously going down to 10 men's not great, but when you lose your best player, that's such a knife to the gut. And I think to have had that happen, however, when the dust is settled, you kind of look at it, it's almost like a piece of art. It's just like just such a thing of beauty.
And again, that's his last ever game.
You
know what I mean? He came out of international retirement to play in that tournament, and he was still player of the tournament.
Yeah,
and he still did that, and you're just like.
As well, I think he showed a little bit of mercy as well, because if he'd have aimed that headbutt at that space, he would have. I swear to God, he would have killed him. He would have killed him. Would have just squashed his head like a watermelon. It's just.
Yeah.
Surprised he didn't actually go through his chest. Just.
I remember seeing it, and I was just like, "What has gone on?" You know what I mean? Like, you just like, I don't know. I'd never seen anything like that. You know what I mean? And it was, you see like people kicking out, or maybe the odd like shove or that kind of thing, but not like a full blown headbutt to the chest. You know what I mean? But yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I will say, I kind of empathise a little bit with Materazzi, because I kind of know how it feels to be booted in the chest. Do you remember? Do you remember when we were playing in the back garden of Ben Smith's house, and we were playing, I think it was like play wrestling, and I came off the ropes, and you spinning roundhouse kicked me right in the chest, and then took the absolute life out of me. And I swear to God, that's the closest feeling I'll ever get to feeling like Materazzi.
Great connection. Yeah. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
And I lost it as well.
You did, you ran off home. Yeah.
But no, I think I ran off home, but not before. At one point, I said to you, "You're ruining my life."
That's it. Yes, you're ruining my life.
Yeah. So if that's how Materazzi felt, good on him.
I knew you were going to bring something up like
that. It was, I didn't actually plan on doing that. It just, I had to. I couldn't avoid it. Good old days.
Yeah. Good.
Which of these sort of two iconic moments do you find the most impressive? Is 2 goals in the World Cup final, or that incredible volley in the Champions League final?
Like, it's difficult, isn't it? I think, am I right in thinking that he's got more, where he's got this joint top goal scorer in World Cup finals, I think I'm right in saying that, with like Jeff Hurst and a couple of others. I think I can't remember who else. Pele, I think. I think Pele is one of them, and then I think there's some random like Vaza or something like that. I don't know, like because they're both unbelievable stages to do that. You know, a lot of players go missing in those games. As you know, like the '98 World Cup final, Ronaldo was just like nowhere near what he was. And then, I don't know. But obviously, the technique for the volley is just ridiculous.
I think it's one of those things where you have to kind of separate the achievement with the actual execution of the goals, because obviously those 2 goals, I think, in the World Cup finals were headers, which like headers are still a thing of beauty. But
it was one of I can't remember what was one, not a penalty. I can't remember.
Because I watched the documentary not that long ago. I think they were both headers. Well, yeah, one of them might have been a penalty. But anyway, they weren't in terms of the sort of quality of that Champions League final. They weren't quite there. But it's the whole turning up at a final, turning up at the grandest stage of them all. Like there are players, I think, you know, Messi's one of them, where obviously he's an incredible player, but a lot of the times he can go kind of missing at the biggest stage. Whereas Zidane, he would always deliver. It was just incredible how he could do it. But then if you compare that with that Champions League goal, just the sheer beauty of it, I think it has to be the greatest ever Champions League goal. Maybe, definitely the best ever Champions League goal in a Champions League final. But it's arguably one of the best ever Champions League goals as well.
Well, I don't know, like Teddy Sheringham, Mulligan and Solskjaer scored some pretty good ones.
Yeah, all right. It's not the Man U channel. It's, but just the like, I keep watching it over and over and over. And it's the way he is almost like a swordsman, sort of unsheathing his sword before striking. It's incredible how he just sets himself for the volley, and then the connection. Like you couldn't. I think Paul Scholes is probably the closest to having that kind of ability to just hit a volley so sweetly. Zidane was just like he had that. So.
I think that goal is up there with goals that you remember for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? Like I remember, say, the Trevor Sinclair overhead or the Tony Yeboah absolute smasher.
Gaza 96.
Gaza 96, and they're just things that you absorb and just you can like someone will say something and you can see it. You know what I mean? You can see it totally. And I think when that happens, you know, it's like it's an unbelievable goal, you know. And yeah, I suppose if we're looking at it from that point of view, I can't remember the 98 goals, not off the top of my head, without watching them. You know what I mean? I might watch them and go, oh yeah, I remember it now. But sat here now, I can definitely see everything about that goal. You know, also Eric Cantona in the FA Cup final against Liverpool. You know what I mean? But yeah, there's not many that I can. David Beckham free kick, you know, for England. There's not many others that I could just roll off without being reminded. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I had to pick one, then it's not a bad one to pick, I suppose.
Have you got any other bits you want to say at all that are sort of off the notes that I've talked about?
I don't think so. Only like obviously that he made his debut at 22 for France.
Mm.
And you're like, who makes their debut at 22 these days? You know what I mean? That is late.
Mm.
You know, late in the game now, isn't it? Like you just think nowadays, especially in this country, in England, it's like anyone with any kind of talent, and you're like, right, you know, you're 17, 18, get yourself to the England team, the senior team.
Yeah.
And I just looked at it and I couldn't believe it. 22, he made his debut. You know what I mean? Yeah. But yeah, I think it's just the way it was back then. There wasn't so much hype, I think, you know, hype about a player. And I suppose that gave him the opportunity to develop out of the public eye a little bit. Apart from, you know, obviously I think in 96, obviously he knew he was going to Juve that summer anyway, but no one really knew who he was unless you obviously watch French football, you know.
If you had to sort of compare a modern player to Zidane right now, is there any player that you can think of that is anywhere near what kind of player Zidane is?
No. No, I don't think. I think that kind of player's maybe gone. That kind of commanding midfielder. So, like, obviously, you had people like Patrick Vieira who had the physical presence. He was nowhere near as skillful. You know what I mean? He was world class.
Yeah,
but he wasn't Zidane class.
Yeah,
but then
power,
and obviously he's gone. You don't have any kind of midfielders like that anymore. You know, I can't think of anyone.
Pogba, perhaps. Obviously, I don't think Pogba's quite there in terms of. He's definitely not on the same level as Zidane. But almost similar in a sense that he's a kind of similar player in a way that he's almost like a number 8, number 10, sort of caught between those two positions. He has great touch on his left and his right. Can strike a ball from distance, and maybe I suppose the difference is that Paul Pogba. I don't think Pogba is as elegant or has anywhere near the same amount of control of the football as Zidane.
No, I think you're probably right in that. Yeah. I'd say Pogba's probably the closest. And when I say closest, I'm talking the difference between running a mile and running a marathon. You know what I mean? Like, I genuinely can't. And I didn't, I've never thought about it, I suppose. But you've either got nowadays it's more like you've got holding midfielders, that are okay on the ball. They're just there to move the ball sideways and maybe forwards a few times. Then you've got your attacking midfielders that are more smaller, like obviously we're in situations now where teams are going out there without forwards, you know what I mean? No strikers. So I think in that aspect, I think that there isn't anything like him anymore. At United, we've got Bruno Fernandes at the minute. Unbelievable player, great player. But he's busy. He's a busy. I'd call him a busy player. You know what I mean? Yes, he's got the talent. Yes, he's got the touch. But he's not. I wouldn't say he's commanding. I'd say he's busy. And I think Zidane was commanding. Like you knew he was on the pitch, and you knew that if you give him the ball, it's not going anywhere unless he wants to move it somewhere. You know what I mean? And I just think that it's kind of that now, where we've got maybe you've got your two, like I said, two holding midfielders, and then you've got like 4 people that are saying maybe Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo, slightly. You've got the physicality. He's not he's the same. He's obviously got great touch and stuff, but he's not going to drop into midfield and pick the ball up and change the game in that aspect. You know what I mean? Like grab the game by the scruff of the neck. He's not doing that. You know, unless obviously he's just scoring goals or, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, probably a cross between Cristiano Ronaldo and Paul Pogba, which is not a bad thing.
It's almost like when you can edit on like Pro Evo, it's everything up to 99. That's Zidane.
Yeah, like I love the fact that like people are like, oh, Messi or Ronaldo, and you're like, yeah, now it's that, but they were playing when Zidane was playing. You know what I mean? They weren't the players they are like maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, but I'd still take Zidane every time. And I don't know whether it's because he's not like a goody Barcelona schoolboy that's just grown into a man and just stayed the same, or he's not a prima donna kind of, you know, Ronaldo-esque type. Nonchalant, I think, is the best way to describe him. And it is, you know, unless you upset him, obviously. But yeah. I just smile. I smile when I think about him. You know what I mean? And like, just remember watching him in games. Just you remember when the Premier League on Sky had the player cam? I just think if we could have had that for Champions League, I'd have just watched Zidane all the time. You know what I mean? Like that. But yeah.
I think like nonchalant is definitely the best way to sum him up, because I think when you sort of mentioned about Bruno Fernandes and just being this busy player, but then with Zidane, there's that nonchalance, but it's almost, I hate to do this, comparing it a little bit. Obviously, Mesut Ozil is like million levels below in terms of just that being able to retain the ball and having it's almost sort of this sort of lethargic arrogance to like be sort of laid. Almost Berbatov had it a bit as well, where you could kind of
like all good French players.
Yeah.
Arrogance.
Yeah.
Cantona had it. Ginola had it. You know what I mean? Pogba's got it. He's not. I wouldn't put Pogba in that category. However, you know what I mean? Like Vieira had it to a certain point. You know what I mean? And I just think they don't give a damn. You know what I mean? All they want to do is play football and beat people, and that's it. You know what I mean? And I think that's like I think we're catching with some of the young English talent, but we're behind. You know what I mean? In that kind of mentality, and actually just believing in yourself to do it.
Just one last question for you, Stu. What's your thoughts on Zidane as a manager?
Temperament, I think, is probably the same. Like, if you see how he's been with Gareth Bale, I think he either likes you or he doesn't. And I think, you know, the same with Odegaard, which, by the way, for Arsenal is an unbelievable signing, even on a loan for half a season. I just think if he's not interested in you as a player, you may as well not bother. I think that's, you know, and I think that's the way he always has been. I get the impression that he's just not fussed about pleasing people. He just wants to win, you know, and I think that's, I don't see him as a man manager that much. You know, I might be wrong. You know, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but you definitely don't see a lot of that side of him, you know. But yeah, I think, would he be successful if he went to Rotherham or like, you know,
with Guardiola?
Yeah, you don't know. You don't know because it's never going to happen. It's Zidane, you know. And to be fair, he's done all right. You know what I mean? As far as it goes. But yeah, it is that thing of, but can he do it elsewhere? You know, when he hasn't got the backing of, you know, Real Madrid, you know, and would it, like, for instance, would it be different if he was at Chelsea and he was a Chelsea legend like Frank Lampard? Would they sack him? Yeah, probably. You know, I just think that he's landed on his feet, that he's an absolute legend at Real Madrid. But also, they're not like Chelsea, where Abramovich will just be like, "Nah, you've had, you know, a bad spell. See you later." You know, it doesn't matter who you are. So I don't know. You know, it's hard to tell. It's hard, like, yeah, it's hard to tell as an outsider, I think.
If you said that, you know, Jurgen Klopp has heavy metal football, Guardiola tiki-taka, and then Zidane, how would you describe the style of football that he has Real Madrid playing? Difficult one, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you know what's also difficult is that you don't get to watch it that much. Like you have BT Sport over here, and like, unless you've got the subscription to BT Sport on the TV, you want to watch it on your phone. You know, that's where I watch the BT games, is on my phone. Can I be bothered to watch Champions League on my phone? No. So it kind of, it's changed in that aspect. You know, like, I'd love ITV to get it back, but they never will. So it's kind of answering that. Really, I don't know.
No.
Like, yes, I've seen a few games, and yes, you know, obviously I pay attention to it, but it's hard to tell, you know, and I think it's hard to tell for anyone. Like, but yeah,
I think that
I don't know, to be honest.
That goes a little bit, because he is a very quiet man. He is a very sort of humble guy. In a
French Paul Scholes. That's what he is.
Yeah.
French Paul Scholes.
Yeah. So maybe that's just, he keeps a lot of things very. Mind you, Paul Scholes is a lot more vocal than he ever was as a player these days. It's so surprising.
Yeah, he is now.
Maybe when Zidane retires, he'll become like a mouthy, jobby little pundit.
Wait, didn't you talk about Paul Scholes?
How long was he a manager for, though?
What, Paul Scholes? Probably a grand total of 3 months, if you add all of his things together.
Enough for him to give views on management all the time.
Well, mate, it must be frustrating, the same as like when Zola was at West Ham. You know what I mean? Where Glenn Hoddle was at Swindon, and you're still their best player. You know what I mean? Like, you know,
that's a good point.
So
you
it must
bring
be
up,
frustrating.
because I think with Zidane, do you think it's almost a case of like a lot of the players there, like with Glenn Hoddle when he was at England, the manager of England, a lot of the players were just like, can't do what you do, Glenn. You're so good on the ball. It's just that you don't have that ability. Do you think that's almost a bit of the case with Zidane? It's like, hey, I'm not you. Like, you're an absolute wizard.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Like, I just think this is the thing. You don't see a lot of him. You don't hear a lot of him. You know, I'd love him to come to England and do it. I don't know where he'd go in England, like, but especially not Newcastle, but or West Brom.
Okay guys, that was Zinedine Zidane Under the Floodlights there. Not sure I wanted to end on Stuart uttering Zidane and West Brom in the same sentence together, but hey ho, that's just how we do down at the Triple F. Hope you all enjoyed that, and please subscribe to the channel on YouTube, follow us on Twitter and give us a like on Facebook. We'll be back again with another episode of the Triple F Cinema, where me and my friend Ollie will be talking about a very colourful and interesting Italian film called The Match. Thanks again for listening to the Triple F. See you later.
There was nothing else at all in the whole world but football.